Now, running a marathon is hard at the best of times. Try doing it though after suffering coronavirus and the side effects that go with it.
But my biggest worry in hospital is that I could have spread it to someone who could kill someone.
That is today's guest. We look forward to speaking to Liptak, finding out more about this, plus much more on Legends with Bevo.
Hi, I'm Anna Liptak, marathon runner and founder of His and Her Time Health and Fitness and Adventure Time Travel. Join us with Legends with Bevo.
Welcome to Legends with Bevo. Thanks to Anytime Fitness Glenelg.
Anna Liptak, great to have you on Legends with Bevo. What an absolute pleasure. Now, I spoke before about you being the first one in Australia to get the coronavirus. We'll speak about that in a moment. But let's get to yourself and your own journey, though. You're currently His and Her Time founder and also got another business called Adventure Time Travels. Plus, you've got 2 kids as well and you've run 27 marathons. Don't know how you do it, but great to have you on the show. And tell us all about these businesses, how they all came about.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Bevan. So basically, after I had children, I'd been in event management and marketing, and I'd been doing that all over Australia. But after I had my second child, my husband sort of encouraged me to do something that I was really interested in. So he encouraged me to go and study fitness, which at the time I was really like, I'm not really sure if I really want to do that. Not sure if I really want to work in a gym. I was getting paid very well in what I was doing, so I was a little bit offended. But I did see it as a little bit of a way out because I was a full-time carer at home with 2 kids. So I sort of thought, he's offering me 2 nights a week away from the kids, away from having to make dinner, away from having to do the chores, and I get to study something that I really love, which is fitness. I'd always been into fitness. So whether I did something with it in the end didn't matter. So I went off, and on the first night I was probably a little bit hesitant about going because I had put on a lot of weight in with my second child. And I knew that I was going to walk into a room full of fitness trainers who all looked beautiful and were younger than me. And yes, I walked in and they were all beautiful and young, and there I was carrying a lot of weight. And on that first session, they actually stood me up and made an example of me being a woman who had just given birth to a baby, and showed people with my girth measurements why I was carrying weight. So in that first session, I was completely humiliated, I guess.
Wow, that's very confronting.
It was
for you.
really confronting. Yeah. But it also made me realise how vulnerable women were, particularly at that stage of being a woman, of having babies. So it really made up my mind that I wanted to become really fit, and I really wanted to help other women. So during the course, what I did is I went for runs while I was there studying. So when I had a break, I'd go out for a run because it was really difficult for me at that stage to have any of my own time. So I sort of gradually over the 9 months of training got myself fitter, and at the end, yes, I was fitter in the fitness test than anyone else that was in that room. So that was great. And then what I decided is that I would start a business called Her Time, because literally it was her time. So I sent out a flyer, and within about 2 weeks I had 40 women signed up. Wow. So it was fantastic, and really it was just going to be a little hobby business for me to maybe get $50 a week to buy a T-shirt. But it's been a business now for 15 years. And from that, the other business, Adventure Time Travel, extended. So first of all, it extended into his time because a lot of the husbands got jealous, or partners got jealous that the women got so fit. So then I realised I was missing potentially 50% of the market. So I started His and Her Time. So that was about 12 years ago. And from there, probably 10 years ago, I started my next business, which was Adventure Time Travel, because what I realised is if you set goals for people, and really big goals, and help them ascertain things that they didn't think were possible, that's where the real joy of fitness comes in. So I started taking people overseas. So I've taken people to places like the Great Wall of China Marathon, the Paris Marathon, New York Marathon, Boston Marathon, all around the world. So I've taken hundreds of people since then, and now we're an international travel operator for the New York City Marathon. So it's been a fabulous ride for me. So it was one of those changes that just changed my life, just like that, just by that one question from my husband saying, "Why don't you go and do something you love?" And yeah, so it was really good.
Well done to you, because and that's just such a great story. And I guess how good it must have felt for you as well, knowing that you'd been humiliated in front of those group of people, which is just horrible in itself. And I've had my own sort of humiliations in the past of my schooling, but that's another story for another occasion. But just credit to you for not only standing up to those people, but then doing something about it. And how good it must have felt, saying sucked into these people that gave you a hard time, and then you've come out and proven to them that you can do it by being the fittest in the whole class. Like, they must have just felt so bad after that and so guilty.
Well, I'm not sure if it was that obvious to any of them, but it certainly was to me. And I remember going for a run on one of those evenings that I was there, and I was running around the block, and a man actually yelled out at me and he said, "Give it up, Jigalong." And that was the moment that really made my mind up, right, bugger you. If I wasn't fit, I would have gone inside and never come out again. But because I was fit, I was a fit person, I actually kept going. And I thought, how dare people have that authority and that plain, business of actually commenting on someone. And I thought, you know what, I really want to help other women to know what it's like to exercise outside in a group where they feel more confident.
How good is that? Well done to you. And yeah, people are just horrible, aren't they? So you just got to ignore them. And there are a lot of great people out there as well. So
yeah, and out of those situations, great things come, so they propel great things. So that man made up my mind to start these two businesses. So thank you to that man.
Exactly. Good on you. And I mentioned before, 27 marathons. What a phenomenal effort. I've never done one, which just makes me feel very guilty.
Well, you'll have to come and do one with us.
The most we've ever done is a 12K Sydney Bay, which I was quite happy with in itself.
That's good.
The next step is the half, and then there may be a marathon one day. But hey, 27 marathons. Which one has been your favourite so far, Anna, and why?
Okay, so there's two really special ones for me. So the first one was the Boston Marathon. So to get into the Boston Marathon, it's like the epitome of marathons because you actually have to qualify to get in. So it's really hard to actually get in. So for us to get in, it was like enormous. So that was fantastic. So Boston, but that was in 2013. So that was the year of the bombings. It was a fantastic experience, but it ended quite sadly, I guess, and very quickly. And we flew back to Adelaide very quickly. So, we were going to explore Boston at that stage. And, it was really sad because people did lose their lives and it was a terrorist attack. So that was pretty confronting. In the same year, I was also doing New York and taking a group across to New York, the New York Marathon, which was the first time I did it in 2013. So that was confronting too because, one, did I want to go back to overseas? My children were very young at the Boston Marathon, so they were questioning why I'd be going back because that was a very terrifying time for them, seeing all those images come up, and they knew that I was over there and people, were ringing my husband, and, it was pretty stressful time. But I did decide to go back to New York, and I did the New York City Marathon, and I took 30 people over. So that in itself is kind of hard to do, but I got my PB over in New York in 2013. So New York's very special to me also because since then I also have done it with my mum, who was 72 at the time, and we walked it. So that was really special. And then the year after I did it with my husband. So there's many special memories over there. But New York itself, the marathon there's nothing that matches it. There's 2 to 3 million people that litter the streets from the start to the finish, and you just get wheeled along the whole way. So it doesn't even feel like you're running. You feel like you're on clouds because there's people literally, they're doing more on the sidelines than you are doing running. So they're dancing, they're screaming, so they're literally lifting you the whole way. So it is a marathon that you can't replace. So that is a special one, but the other one is really special because you have to actually qualify to get in.
And speaking of the New York Marathon, obviously this year you haven't been able to do it due to the coronavirus situation, but you actually recently, and again, it just shows how amazing you are, Anna, because you actually completed a virtual marathon around Adelaide for this year's New York Marathon, whilst also going through the side effects of the coronavirus, which again we'll speak about afterwards. But how the heck did you do that, and what sort of training was involved? And gee, it must have been hard to finish the marathon, and that sort of feeling of jubilation. What was it like?
Well, it was actually really weird because at the start of the year, I started training one of my clients because I train lots of people to get to a marathon, particularly beginners. And I said to her at the start of the year, I'm happy to, do all the training with you, do the long runs on the weekends. Then I got COVID in March, so that was all put on hold to April, May. And then her race was obviously cancelled, which is the Lawn Marathon. So then she waylaid till September. Throughout all of this, I have been struggling with ongoing symptoms of COVID. So I've had, sore ears, tight chest, racing heart, all these different things that are unknown at the moment, which has been really scary in itself. So my training has been very limited because I can't run too far, too fast, or too often because then I'm back in bed. So I've been quite lucky in that I don't work for someone else. I don't work full time. I work in my own hours. So I can work in the middle of the night and I can sleep during the day. My priority is exercise. So for someone else, they might not be able to run, but because for me, that's the most important thing in my mental health that's got me through that I've continued to do that. So I did manage to do, small runs, and I got up to 20 Ks with her by September, which was still waylaying me and putting me back in bed. But after she did the run, I sort of had a thought of, maybe in November I will do the New York virtual marathon because I want to do 10 New York marathons in a row. So I thought, I did it with my mum. I walked around it in 7.5 hours. Surely I can do that again. I know that I can do that. So and then my business coach said to me, Anna, you've got to put it out there. You've got to tell people about it because there's lots of messages being sent there. I was like, oh, really? Now I'm really going to have to do this. And now I am a little bit competitive. Now I want to run it and I don't know if I can. Like I do have a lot of doubt with my body at the moment. And I guess, a marathon is such a long distance and it's such an unknown that even when you're really healthy and fit, you actually don't know if you're going to make the distance. So this was quite scary for me. It was quite a vulnerable situation because lots of people now knew about it. But in the end, I thought, no one cares what time I do. No one cares if I walk it. No one actually cares about a marathon time. No one actually really, probably 95% of people don't even know the distance of it. So if I take 3 hours or 7 hours, it doesn't matter. So we did a really great grid course of Adelaide City from east to west and then south to north. And that ended up at Rundle Mall. And we had all my clients came out and ran with me the last 5Ks. And I had people along the way tooting our horns because we were also raising money for Backpack for Kids SA.
Wonderful.
So they supported it. So I had a lot of support out there. I had someone driving and delivering us water every 2Ks. So in the end, for a very difficult run, for one run that I didn't know how I'd go, it was the most unbelievable run. I ran the whole way. Wow. And I didn't feel like I touched the ground once. So in comparison to 2 months earlier where I could hardly run the 20 Ks, like I felt so bad, this run was just perfect weather, perfect race course, perfect people with me. I had my running partner who's done all my marathons just about with me, Chantel Peacock. So she's an amazing woman and she ran with me. And we took it easy. We chatted the whole way, had people come in and out. And it was, by the end, I actually could have done the 100 Ks that day. Like it was like one of those freak ones. I didn't hit the wall once, but we ran a lot slower than we usually did. So it really taught me again and reaffirmed to me that, you can do it as long as you slow down the pace.
Yeah.
Because I have got the endurance. I have done 27 marathons. I just had to slow down and enjoy it. And I loved every minute of it.
That's so cool. And that's such an interesting lesson as well for those people out there that think they can't do a marathon because, like you said, you don't have to go out and smash a ridiculous time like we see the Olympians do.
No.
You can do it over 10 hours. It doesn't matter. As long as you get to finish it, then that's a remarkable achievement in itself, and especially with what you've been through. So Backpack for Kids, though, tell us more about them and sort of how you got involved with them.
Well, it was actually through Soda. Mark Soderstrom, because he was doing some fundraising for them and he supports Adventure Time Travel. He's an ambassador for us and travels with us. So I decided we'd support them because I'm also really interested in foster care itself. And this raising funds was these backpacks are given to kids who are being put out from their families and they're going into a unknown area of being with another parent. And this is the one security that they've got. Often they've never had anything new before. And it's just a lovely gift that they get given. It's their security, I guess, when they get placed into a foster home. So I feel very strongly about that, having had children, about, displacement. These children must be so stressed. And it's just one thing that we can give. And, as a community, we can actually do things. So over the last 10 years with Adventure Time Travel, we've raised over $500,000 for different charities. So, and it's just a nice way to give back. I think everyone in the community can do something, and if you can do something, it's great. Whether it's $2 or it's just helping someone on the street, that's what makes me feel good, is if I do something good for people.
Wonderful. What a great cause as well. So I'm glad we're giving them a shout out.
Yeah, me too.
Now, we better get to the serious stuff, Anna, because obviously you mentioned earlier on this year, you were the first one in Australia to be diagnosed.
I don't think I was the first one in Australia.
You weren't in Australia?
No, it wasn't the first one, but I was definitely in there. I would like to take that medal because I haven't been first in many things. I think I would have been first in South Australia if they diagnosed me on the first day that I went to them, but they didn't. So I was the 6th in South Australia. So they ripped that trophy from me. So yeah, 6th in South Australia.
Hey, it doesn't matter though, because you've still gone through it and you've come out the other side, which a lot of people can't say they have. We know how bad this pandemic has been, and we'll get to all the people out there that keep on saying that it's just a myth, because clearly it isn't, and you can prove that. But how did you actually get it? And what were the effects that came with it, the symptoms of it, Anna? Because there's different types of, you get some people who get the virus and have no effects whatsoever, and they just move on and whatever. But you've had the serious side of the coronavirus. Tell us more about it.
So I went to an international documentary conference for a documentary I'm doing, I'm Not a Runner, and that was held in Melbourne. Now, at that stage in March, so that was March the 1st, it wasn't even being talked about. Corona wasn't being talked about. So it wasn't even an issue for us to discuss, like with my husband or anyone, to say, oh, you shouldn't be going. Not one person said, oh, have you heard of COVID? Because it was still over in China. It was in China. It just hit Spain. So there was no thought for us. So we just went across this conference, and then I developed quite a severe headache in the middle of the conference, which I didn't. Sometimes I get headaches, and it was a pretty full-on conference and meeting lots of people, so I just attributed it to that. When we got home, I was really sick, and I developed a really bad fever. I remember falling on the floor in the laundry one night. I remember one night not being able to breathe properly, and I said to my husband, I think you're going to have to call an ambulance. I can't breathe. In the meantime, I had been to the doctor who had diagnosed me with sinusitis. And then over the weekend, I was still really, really sick. I was isolating because I couldn't go out anyway, so no one was seeing me apart from my family. The next time I went to go and get tested, I waited for 2 hours in a 38-degree heat. I was so sick. I was sitting on the footpath. I couldn't even get to the front of the line. Got to the front of the line. They said, no, you haven't been overseas. You don't need to be tested. If you want to, you can stay around. I'm like, oh my God, how long's the next line? They said an hour. I said, I can't stay here. Like, I literally needed to be in bed. But on the way home, my husband texted me that the repat was opening the next day. So I did the drive-through because I was pretty sure I had it, and I didn't want to see anyone if I had it. And then, yes, 24 hours later, it was confirmed that I had it. It immediately changed like that. The CDC, everyone was straight on to me, the government ringing me, the tracking, the whole thing. It was really professional. My kids had to go and get tested straight away, and my husband, the ambulance came, completely dressed in their garb. It was pretty scary. It was really confronting. And I went to the hospital, and I was on the infectious disease. They were talking between me being on the ICU or infectious disease. And I said, please don't put me in ICU. I was still able to talk and things. I just didn't want to be into that depths of the hospital myself. So I went into infectious disease, and then they did the chest x-rays, and yes, it came back. I had the pneumonia part of it. And then the doctor explained that that's the severe aspect. So 20% of people will get the severe, and 80% will get the not so severe, which is what one of my children ended up getting. So I stayed in hospital, and they treated me, and they were really good. So I got lots of medication, and I just did what they told me, really. It was really scary in hospital because I couldn't move outside of this room, and no one could come into me. It took half an hour for someone to come in, and I felt so sorry for them for coming into me because all I was seeing at the time were all these horrible images of people from China dying. At the time, I was landing on the fact that I was healthy. So, I eat well, I exercise every day, I don't drink, practice mindfulness. So I know that essentially I've got a healthy body, but my biggest worry in hospital is that I could have spread it to someone who could kill someone. So that was a really big concern of mine. My mum, is probably in that more vulnerable stage. She's 73. She's had breast cancer, and she smoked. And she looked after me while I was sick on a few days. So I was really concerned about my mum. Then I found out that my son had it, and then it was like the question, oh my God, has he spread it to someone at school whose grandparent's going to die? Everyone's going to track it back to us. So that was a really horrible feeling with it. Essentially, after 5 days, I was able to go home with my husband and child. One son who didn't have it, they could go somewhere else, and I could go home to my son, who was obviously extremely stressed. My whole family was extremely stressed because no one actually knew what was going to happen. Was I going to die? Was I ever going to see my children again? It was pretty horrific. But eventually I got to go home. The stress levels really came down from my son and me being at home, and my husband was able to go off, who was still pretty stressed. Did he have it? Did he not have it? Did we have it? Anyway, so we got treated very well, and thankfully, we had some beautiful nurses who came into our house every day. I felt so sorry for them that they chose to come in, and they helped us, and they took our temperatures and everything else they needed and tested us every day. So we were really blessed with the treatment we had. And Since then, I have had, I got through it, and 3 weeks later, I think I tested negative. And I remember the day they said, "Oh, you're negative. You can go out now." I'm like, "You mean we can go out of the house?" And it was really weird. I didn't want to go out because it was like, "Oh, do we really want to go out?" I told my son. He said, "Oh, great. Can we go to Marion?" I'm like, "Oh, you want to go to Marion? People are going to recognize us." Well, we went to the shopping centre together. The first shop we walked into, the lady said, "Have you heard about the mother and son that just live around the corner?"
No.
And my son just looked at me and said, I could see his face, "Do not say anything." So we just stood there and went, "Oh, yeah, I think so." And then the next shop said something similar as well. So we were like, "Oh, let's just go home." Because we also knew that if people saw us and then got it, then it would still be. So then what we did is we went down south, and I just didn't see anyone for another 4 weeks. I just didn't want to be a part of it because it was still like, is everyone going to get it at that stage? So I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to be near anyone, so that we weren't responsible. It was a pretty, hard position to be in. One that you were worried about your own health, but you're worrying about everyone else. And then, it was pretty worrying because we saw it from, when we went in, life was completely normal, and when we came out, Marion was like 3 shops open. So it was really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad your son. Obviously, glad to hear that he's okay as well, because you mentioned before, 20% of people like yourself can have really bad effects of it, and much worse in a lot of cases we've seen. So good to hear that he's on the mend as well.
Yeah.
And yourself, what sort of side effects have you had since you've had the virus? Obviously diagnosed back in March, you said, Anna.
Yeah. So from there, I've had all sorts of things, and sometimes you think, is it psychosomatic? Is it something in my head? But you can hear this in my chest already. That I get a really tight chest. I've got congestion right through my ear canals and my head, and I sort of get really congested. My ears hurt. I've had my heart checked, which was good, and there is a little bit of scarring on there. Whether that's to do with COVID, they're not sure, but they'll keep an eye on that. But the thing is that you have to keep checking with different specialists because, and I've got other people. The chronic fatigue has been terrible, really debilitating. There's been weeks that I've spent half the week, more than half the week in bed. And I've had to keep my 2 businesses going because obviously Adventure Time Travel has completely been decimated. We were taking 150 people to New York this year. So then we had to deal with all the stress of all those people. This is in the middle of me being in hospital and everything else. And, the refunds and all that sort of stuff. It's been very stressful. And then my other business, they have been with me for a long time, most of them for 15 years. So they've sort of pivoted with me. I went online for a little while. And then they've come back with me, but they're also very forgiving, if, I'm not up to scratch on my sessions or there's other people training. So it's been really good, So I've been blessed with great people, my husband, my kids around me, and plus my extended family, plus my work, which is a great community in itself.
And in terms of people out there that's, mentioned before, that just think this is a myth, and we've had Trump over in America saying there's nothing to see here, yet we've had 250,000 deaths. We won't go into that, but what sort of advice do you have for people out there that do think this is just a myth, Anna?
Well, I think we've been very fortunate in Australia that we are landlocked and we haven't had it severely like America and Europe, because it is a different equation over there. People are dying, and we would have lost a lot more lives had we not been landlocked and the government acted so quickly. For someone that's had it quite severe, I'm young. Well, youngish.
You don't look 46 for starters, so obviously
21.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll go with that. But I'm on lots of Facebook pages with other people right around the world who have had it, and there are young people, and there are people who are just as fit as I am, and there are people who have lost their lives. There's some children, I believe, have lost one parent at least. So we are very fortunate over here, and. I think it's not only the 80% who only get it as a cold, it's potentially who they can spread it to. So, there's super spreaders that, just go, in London and UK at the moment who just go, well, I don't tell anyone I've got it because I'm okay. And it's just spreading it to people who potentially will die. So that's really upsetting. And then there's the Trump, oh, it's nothing, it's just cold. Well, did he have it? I don't know. But, it's kind of it is. It's baffled all of us, hasn't it? The whole thing has been devastating. It's devastated businesses. It's devastated people's lives. It's devastated so much that for people to not respect it is really demeaning to those like me that have had it, to those particularly who've lost their lives, and also those who've lost their businesses.
Yeah, that's right. You absolutely said it perfectly well there. And, we do think of all the people out there that have actually had the virus and, that have lost loved ones. And yeah, at least, fingers crossed we're on the positive side of it now and going forward. Hopefully next year we'll start to see more of a pre-COVID norm. What do you think we need to do though to go back to that pre-COVID norm, I guess, where we can, I guess in Adelaide we've been pretty lucky because we haven't had the lockdown as much as Melbourne has. But for the whole of Australia to go back to normal again, what do you think needs to happen, Anna?
Well, I guess we just have to keep listening to the government, trust our government, trust the information we're getting from the experts. They're the experts, they're the ones telling us what to do. So I listened the whole time I was sick to the experts. There is no way that I could face up to this illness without their knowledge. So I guess I'm looking to the experts to advise us, and to listen to them is really what we need to do.
And your documentary you touched on before, this sounds really exciting. Tell us more about that.
So it's been 3 years in the making. So it was actually filmed on the New York Marathon I did with my mum. So my mum is one of the central characters actually. So it follows her journey and 4 other women's journey, all with their own obstacles. So there's Marika, who's her husband left her, and she was left with 5 kids, and she had no money. But through running and through the New York City Marathon, she turned her life around and is now a policewoman. There's another lady who, it's about people achieving extraordinary things, but normal people. So, I once saw a film like this, but it was all about the elite athletes. And I couldn't relate to it. And I've run at that stage, 18 marathons. And I was like, that's just it's too far-fetched for even me to even think that I could do that. I thought, wouldn't it be nice to show people that anything's possible, that anyone can do extraordinary things and receive that same, I guess, glory that elite athletes get. So part of the documentary, see my mum walking along, and she said, I just had to start lapping it up, all these people cheering me along. I felt so good, and we, as ordinary people, you don't usually get to experience that. So it's about watching these people's journey, their obstacles that get in their way, normal life, and how they overcome that and how it changes their lives.
Can't wait to see it. Sounds absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Speaking of awesome, you grew up with 3 brothers. One was quite famous in Adelaide. He was the poster boy back in the day with the Adelaide Crows, won a Best and Fairest as well, the gold jacket that's everyone knows about being Crows fans, Matthew Liptak, and he's gone on now to be a famous surgeon as well. What was it like growing up with him and the other 2 brothers?
Well, I was the youngest of 3 brothers. So at that stage, I really didn't think there was any difference between girls and boys. I wanted to be like my brothers, and I did everything like my brothers. It's not now till I've had children that I realise there's a big difference between boys and girls, and I felt a little bit sorry for the little Anna who tried to be a boy all that time. But essentially, they were really good brothers to me. And, we had a really nice family life. We grew up in the country. Then we came to Glenelg and grew up in Glenelg, and a very nice beach life. Matt's always been pretty determined, as are the other 2. So I had Patrick's was an Australian runner and an Australian fencer. Danny was an Australian kayaker. And Matt's the AFL footballer. So the benchmark on sport was pretty high.
Wow.
And I was actually really good at all sports. So I sort of fluffed my wings over a lot of them. And, there was people that did tell me that I was going to be Olympics for running, but there was no one really to pick me up or coach me. I was the youngest of 4, by the time they got to me, Matt was pretty determined, as they all were, to make it in football, which he did. And he studied medicine at the same time. So, to do that, as did the other brothers, they held one's a lawyer and one's in fund management. So there is something that makes my family want to achieve. I'm not sure what it is, but they've certainly achieved in some ways, not always. They're not perfect, let me tell you that. It's been definitely great having them.
Obviously, Mum and Dad will be certainly very proud of all 4 of you, no doubt. And there must have been a fair bit of banter, though, growing up, you being the only girl and 3 brothers. They must have picked on you a bit, Anna.
Well, it's funny. I'm not sure if I was picked on because there was the 3 boys, so they certainly had the fights between them. And if anyone touched me, you can't hit a girl, you can't, so that they were very protective of me. In lots of ways, so much so that they wouldn't let any of their friends come near me, which was a bit detrimental to me in some ways because there were quite a few good-looking friends around the house.
Sure, Maddie had some good-looking Crows teammates that came
They
over.
weren't allowed near me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was lots of fun.
And in terms of the running track, we all love the banter at sporting clubs. I've been involved with footy for 20 plus years and played other sports as well. Does that happen a bit with the running as well? Stir each other up a bit, and you being, I guess the charismatic sort of girl that you are.
Yeah, there's definitely banter, and that's what keeps you going. I guess running itself is a solo sport, but that's the team thing is actually what makes it. So mine is very much about the team. I've run marathons solo and I've run marathons with people, and the ones that I run with people are so much better for me because I love, that team and talking and the conversations you can have while you're running because you're both moving forward, literally moving forward. You don't actually have to look at each other. It's not like having a coffee, but yeah, it's fantastic. So, there's so many great relationships that are formed through running.
Well, Anna Liptak, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Legends with Bevo. Thanks for sharing your incredible story. Well done to you on not only overcoming this horrible virus, but, finishing a marathon after everything you've been through this year. It's a credit to you, and look forward to speaking again in the future and following your journey.
Thanks for having me, Bevan. It's been great.
Sounds so good.